test preparation. We've basically covered all the pieces of test preparation, with the one possible exception of test anxiety. And we'll look at that in the next page, actually. but here's the kind of the overview is if a child feels prepared for the test, there's a good chance, other than past experience, there's a good chance that he's not going to be anxious about the test. If he can walk into the test with a fair degree of certainty that he's going to do well, if he gets that synesthesia, that visual or auditory kinesthetic, or visual kinesthetic synesthesia with respect to his answers, he's going to walk away from the test feeling relatively confident, which is going to make taking the next test much easier. So basically, take a test, break it down into the pieces, whatever information is going to be required, and make sure that we have a recipe, a formula for handling each piece. So you don't want to take a test like this. You want to take this question and this type of question and the reading and the answer to the questions and then the logic questions and this question. You break it down into pieces, and then you should be really good to go. So those chapters 7 through 12 should give you pretty much almost all the strategies for taking a test, whatever the subject may be. Good? Okay. Actually, let me do one more thing. I'll give him another one more minute. No, she's going to want to be here for anxiety. Good to go there?
I think I heard him. I heard a woo!
Oh, they're waiting. I got a
Toy.
Your
fingers warm out.
Just need a little bit more practice with this.
Yeah, those can take some practice.
Okay, Jamie, you let go of my finger now.
Just get ready to go over anxiety.
Oh boy. Just what we need to know about now. Yeah. Thank you. You want it filled up more?
And I got some more water if anybody else needs more water.
Thank you, I did.
No problem.
Oh, here we
All
are.
night and started reading them.
I think you want to miss anxiety.
Good sleep. That's why I started reading over all those. And then I went back to sleep. I should have done that.
Hey, little boss.
Sleep.
Okay. All right.
I woke up in the middle of the night one time. I don't know how many times I woke up, but I woke up like, where am I at? Where's my kids?
I hate that.
It was dark, and I was just like,
Yeah.
anxiety maybe. I was like, where am I at? What am I doing? And I'm like, oh yeah. Because I'm such a light sleeper, and you know, my 2-year-old will sleep through the night, and I'm like, why is he not waking up? You know, why am I still sleeping?
Why am I still
That was
sleeping?
strong.
That doesn't ever happen. But I just think I've trained myself to wake up every 2 hours.
Probably.
I at least wake up every 2 hours. I mean, if I'm open my eyes and then go back to sleep, or if I have to get up. Yeah, which is not, you know, it's not good for you.
Maybe about the time the youngest gets in kindergarten, you'll start.
I don't know. I feel like I've never slept. I've always been this light sleeper. If you breathe funny, I'm like, Always been like that.
All right, so eliminating test anxiety. Like we started talking about, the best way to eliminate anxiety is basically to know that you have the information. Once you've practiced some of these strategies a couple of times, you've gone through the recipe, you've studied it, you've memorized it, you've rehearsed it the next day and or within an hour, a day, and a week, right? And you know you've got the information solid, you got your little cheat sheets, you know, stacked up. It's going to be really tough to feel anxious with respect to that particular event. Now, are you carrying are a lot of kids carrying anxiety with them from past failure? Probably. So, what's the quickest, fastest way to get over anxiety? Well, one way is to just do it. And once you've done it and it's over with, there's no more anxiety. Right? So NLP has developed a little 30-second, 1-minute anxiety cure. This is awesome, okay? So let's say this is our timeline, and I'm not going to go into the whole thing right now, but let's just say this is when we were born, and here we are now. We're standing here now, and the event that we're nervous about is out here. Okay? What we're going to do is use a little trick of the brain, because the way the unconscious mind works, as it turns out, if you imagine doing something or imagine that you have already done something, there's not a lot of space between that memory and actually having done it. In fact, remember the left-brainers that we talked about, the ones that are way, way over on the other side of the scale? Well, I think there's some people that would suggest that the reason they're having trouble in life is because they can't make that distinction. When they imagine doing something, it's exactly as real as if they really did it. Does that make sense? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to play a little trick on the brain. Or help our kids play a little trick on the brain. We are going to imagine that we are floating, going out into the future, and we're going to go out past the event. And we're going to imagine standing, let me see if I can get it. Standing in the future, and we're looking back on the event as if it has already happened. Done deal. You studied, you took the test, it's over, you did good. It's all good. Right? It all worked out, it all flowed. So, and you'll be amazed how quickly the anxiety goes away when you do that. So, does anybody have anything in their future that they're a little anxious about?
I have an example.
Okay.
I never drove to a big city, so driving to St. Louis, I was terrified.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to on the way there when it was getting closer and the traffic was getting, kind of, because I'm from a very, very small town. And then the traffic, and it was getting close, and had like 3 lanes, and they went 4 lanes, and I was like, and I mean, you really get like lightheaded and, all of that. And I'm like, do this. I'm going to be at that airport, and I was just doing that, and I mean, I did it. That's why I said, oh, I did it. I've never done that before, but, it physically can make you sick.
Yes. Now, very, very, very important distinction. did you notice, looking back now, do you notice that your conscious mind, right, that left brain, your conscious mind, that brain that you use for logic and talking to yourself, knew that it was absolutely silly and ridiculous to be nervous. And did you also know that that made no difference whatsoever?
Yeah.
Yes.
Still happened.
Big, yeah. So there's a couple of ways of saying this, but my favorite is, it's called the law of will versus imagination. If your willpower and your imagination have a conflict, your imagination will always win. Always. Sooner or later, it will always win. So you do not want to go against that imagination. And ADHD kids prove that all the time. Don't mess with my pictures. Don't mess with my imagination. Don't try to tell me something is true if I can see that it's not. Or I see that it's different. That doesn't mean that it's true. It just means the way they see it's true. And that's a powerful, powerful force. That's what's real. Everything else is optional and blah, 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 blah. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, this is where the power is. This is where the power is. No disrespect to positive thinking and affirmations and all that other really cool stuff, right? It's all good. I'm not gonna, I'm saying this kind of lightheartedly, but I'm not making fun of any of that stuff in as far as it goes. But I will say, where it becomes almost, in my opinion, dangerous and counterproductive, is if those positive affirmations are in conflict versus your imagination, your internal beliefs. A lot of guys have found this out the hard way, you know. What's his name? The intern guy, billionaire, big mean guy on TV. Donald Trump. Couldn't place the name. I kept thinking Donald Duck. I knew that wasn't it. Although he's pretty famous too. But Donald Trump, if people remember way back, if you're old enough, you remember that Donald Trump was born to modest circumstances, and at one point he amassed a wealth that was accounted at $2 billion. That's billion with a B. That's $1,000 million. Okay? That's a lot. Okay? And what happened? Within 2 years, he was broke. Filed bankruptcy. And guess what? You know, how many people in the what is it, like a tiny fraction of 1% would ever do this in their lifetimes? He went and did it again. And guess what? A couple years later, he was broke again. Then he did something very life-changing. He got himself a coach. Probably the most famous coach in the whole world, the most well-known coach, Tony Robbins, who, even though he doesn't call it NLP, well, actually he does now that they've solved all those lawsuits. He used to call it neuroassociative conditioning. Now he calls it NLP, and he's on TV. But guess what? He started working with Donald Trump, and he's pretty tough to get a hold of. You have to jump through some hoops to get to him. So the word from some folks that I know in the network where Donald Trump was paying him $1 million plus a percentage of his income. And people think that's a lot of money, but within about, 6 or 8 years, Donald Trump on TV with all his other stuff was worth an estimated $6 billion. Now, his emotional life, his personal life, that still needed some work, but that's a tangible evidence of getting rid of something, some kind of self-sabotage, some kind of conflict between what he wanted and what was really going on in his head. Does that make sense? Yeah, yeah. Well, that's one theory. I don't know for fact, because I don't know Donald Trump. But what Kathy's saying is, a lot of times when remember I was starting to talk about moving away from stuff, like moving away from your past, away from threats, away from consequences. Well, the problem with that is, you know, when you're like right next to a fire, you're really motivated to move away. But by the time you get 5 or 10 feet away from the fire, the motivation kind of starts to diminish. You know, and you might go back another foot or two, but at some point, it just kind of wears out. The motivation wears out. Whereas a toward emotion, if you're going towards something that's out in the future, it actually gets stronger the closer you get to it. The more you go out, the more you go towards the which is kind of the same thing in reverse. But the nice thing is it increases typically in intensity and strength rather than decreasing. Does that make sense? So that's one of the many advantages to towards motivators. And like I said, in my opinion, a motivator that's from the past, that you're moving away from, there is an inherent victimization that comes with that. You're being victimized. You know, well, I'm just doing my homework because my mom makes me. I'm just doing this because the law makes me. I have to do this. And there's a certain kind of victimization in that, even if it's rewards. Well, I'm going to do this because my mom's going to give me $10. Well, they may like that on the surface, but you still how there's like a manipulation in there. There's a control element where they're kind of, at some point they're going to rebel against that, and I think that's the experience a lot of parents have, who rely on that a little bit too long, a little bit too much, and boy, when they get to be teenagers, 16 years old, those chains are off. They can do whatever they want. They can walk out. They can go to their friend's house. They can disappear. Blah, blah, blah. You need a whole different model for helping them, find their motivation. So anyway, so that's why, generally speaking, I like to make sure that we're working with those internal drives, those internal values, internal motivators, and looking out towards the future to pull us along. So, test anxiety. Nobody has anything they're anxious about? Going back home? What?
What about closing real estate transactions? I mean, I'm okay when I know that the outcome has to do with what I do. I can be sure and reduce my anxiety if I imagine that I do a good job. But where I still have a problem with this is trying to imagine other people doing their job, because I have no control over that part.
Yeah, you're right. You don't. But you do have control over the people you pick. You have control over the projects you pick.
Not always.
Sure you do.
Okay, how about kids in the classroom? All the time, teachers, let's have a group assignment, because those are so much fun. They throw you in a group. Sometimes some teachers say, oh, pick who you want. Other times they just throw you in groups. You're stuck with specific people. You do your share. They don't.
Okay, but you've chosen to be there.
Well,
you could go to a charter school, a private school. You could homeschool.
You can talk to your teacher.
You can talk to the teacher. You can complain to the principal. There's 1,000 things you can do.
yeah, those don't usually pan out. You're usually just stuck. And like with her thing, she was saying, you're stuck working with who you're working with. Like, she's stuck with whoever the other realtor is on the other end that's got to do their share.
No. You suck. I quit. Take your job. Take your closing and shove it up your butt. Boom. Done. You don't have to do anything. And much to the chagrin of some of the moms who come in here with their kids, I tell them flat out, you know what? There is nothing your mom can do to make you go to school. Moms freak out over this one. There is nothing. If your son, was it 14? How much does he weigh?
more about the same as me.
Yeah, if he curls up in a little ball and pulls the
I
covers on,
cannot physically
can you make him?
drag him. No.
So get rid of that. Get rid of that nonsense, that voice, that lie, that just lie. That he's doing something because you're making him. It's not true. If he curls up in a little ball, there's nothing you can do to get him to school. So the reality is that every morning, 5 days a week, he gets out of bed. He chooses to get out of bed. He chooses to get dressed. He chooses to eat breakfast or wait for mom to make him breakfast. And he chooses to go to school. It's all him. It's all him. You're choosing to be a realtor. You're choosing to take on this client and to take on this project. You're choosing every day not to drop this guy and tell him, get lost, you suck. Boom. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I had one this morning. I texted him, I said, did you fax your bank statements yet? He goes, no, I'm tired of this deal, I'm done. Let it go to foreclosure. I said, you know what, we've been working on this thing for 6 months. You know, you have a buyer that's been sitting there waiting for this house for 6 months. I even did your P&L statements for you because you didn't want to do it. I said, if anybody wants to give up, it should be me, but I'm not. So asking you to fax a bank statement is not asking you too much.
Mm-hmm.
He said, okay.
That's for you.
There you go, yeah.
So
there's nothing you can do to make him do anything. He's going to choose to do it or not.
right, so I just had to remind him of what we already been doing and why we're doing this.
Yep, that's good. And if you guys find common ground, right? So there's only one reason to take action. There's only one reason to get out of bed. It's because here's where I am, and here's where I want to be. That's it. There's no other reason. Here's where I am, and here's where I want to be by the end of the day, or the end of the year, or next week, or whatever. So if we want to talk to our kids, if we want to talk to the teacher or whoever, the first thing we need to know is, where do we want to go? And in order to establish that, we better have a common language for discussion. We better have rapport. We better be on the same channel of kind of, okay, this is where we're at. This is, I see the mountain a certain way, you know. I'm looking at this mountain, and okay, so I'm going to try to look at the mountain from the same point of view, from my son's point of view, from his teacher's point of view. And if we can't get on the same side of point of view, conversation's over. That's it. There's no point in going any further. If you're not even able to look at the mountain from the same side, relatively speaking, and establish a rapport, a common language, there's not much point in continuing the conversation. As I said to a nondescript entity on Facebook, you know, never wrestle with a pig. Okay? You both get dirty, but the pig likes it. So unless I have common ground for discussing the issue with someone, I'm not going to go any further. But if we do have common ground, if I can check that off in the conversation, the next thing I'm going to do is find out what this gap is. What's the problem? I don't like the word problem really because it carries a lot of baggage with it. But where's the gap? What's the difference between where I am and where I want to be? If we can agree on that, then we're ready to move on to the next step. And this is a critical one that often gets missed. This is what Lisa was asking about just during lunch. Is it possible to solve the problem? Is it even possible? And I've had parents come, not too many of them because they don't get through the website, okay? If they don't believe their kid is gifted, if they don't believe their kid can accomplish and get to the next step, if they don't believe their kid has these capabilities, they're not going to talk to me. They're going to go do something else. But if they believe that it is possible, if they believe it's possible, Or they get here and I show them is, yes, your kid can spell. Yeah, he's having a little tough with his midlines. He's not able to focus. He's never been taught to focus. He's never been taught to spell using his learning style. He's never been taught to read using his learning style. Math is way too conceptual for his learning style. But he's a smart guy. He can do this. He can learn this stuff with given the right chance and the right coaching. So I believe that it is possible to bridge that gap. And then we go to the $64,000 question, which I'm still not good at answering, which is how? Or what's the opportunity to solve the problem? Does that make sense? So first it's got to be possible. It's got to be believable. It's got to be believable. The kid's got to believe it. The parents got to believe it. And then you say, okay, here's how we're going to solve the problem. We're going to give you a recipe for math or reading or spelling. We're going to give you a recipe for studying for your history test or for writing an essay. And after that, it's somebody's got to take some action. Somebody's got to take some action to test all this out. And then the last part, a very, 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 very important part that's often missing and can't happen if you're in an away from relationship with the task. This next part can't happen. Running your life because someone is making you, going to school because your mom's making you, or your teacher makes you, or the school or the law makes you, running your life that way precludes this next critical element of the conversation, and that is a conversation for accomplishment. How can you possibly accomplish anything if you're doing it because your mom made you? You can't take any joy in that. You can't take any pride. You can't get any feeling of success or satisfaction. So, why the hell are you going to want to do it next time? Why would you want to begin your homework if you just finished 2 hours of homework and you have absolutely no joy or accomplishment in it? Does that make sense? So, again, if we focus on those towards motivators, if we focus on our goals and our values, why is he doing his homework? He's not doing it because you make him. He's doing it because it's important to him in some fashion. And does his behavior always match the underlying intention? No way, no how. It doesn't for any of us. That's a constant battle. That's a constant search to have your behavior, your external behavior, match what's underneath, to match your values, match your intention. The never-ending struggle of humanity. So, does all that make sense? Okay. Any questions on eliminating test anxiety? I really would like to demonstrate if somebody has something they're being anxious about. Nobody? You guys?
What about like a fear of spiders? That can make somebody.
Now that's different.
Is that different?
Okay.
That's like a phobia.
Fear comes from the past.
Right.
See? You had an experience with spiders. You may not remember it. It may be something you heard in a movie. It may be something your mom said when she was pregnant. Who knows? It may be your great-grandfather had a fear of spiders. I don't know. What I do know is that fear is coming to you from the past. If you want to dissolve a fear, fight a fear or phobia, you have to deal with it in the past, in your timeline, in your history. If you want to deal with anxiety, you have to deal with it in the future, because that's where the anxiety is coming from. Yes?
Well, I got anxiety about Mondays, because Mondays are always the hardest real estate days on how to do all the thing and do this too.
Right.
Is that a good example?
Well, that's really a mixed one, because because you have a lot of past experience telling you that Monday's going to be hard. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And unless you change something, the Mondays is going to be hard. Unless you organize your time differently, or don't answer the phone, or something. You know, skip Monday and just go to Tuesday. Question.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how about an example would it be? Because my son's done this to me. It's been a while, but he'll have like where he gets so overwhelmed over the idea of starting this homework.
Right.
To where suddenly he's having symptoms of an asthma attack, even though he doesn't really have asthma, but he'll just suddenly can't breathe. It's full-on anxiety, panic attack over starting this homework.
Yes. Yes. Again, a lot of that's coming from the past. Here's the judge. Here's the criteria that I look for. If the emotion is out of proportion to the event.
Well, it feels that way to me, but maybe not to him.
But if it appears that way, there's probably baggage from the past that's changing this. I mean, look at homework, okay? Now, if his homework really is going to take 2.5 hours,
right.
and if there's 3 things in here, like an essay that he doesn't understand,
right.
that anxiety is that's not
right.
anxiety. That's an alarm going,
yeah.
I can't do this.
Right.
See, so this is really a huge issue for kids, in that if they're in a constant state of anxiety, you can never find out what the real problem is. See, it's like having a fire alarm going off in 5 different parts of the building. Well, which is the real one?
Right.
What's the real cause?
Right.
3 of the fire alarms are left over from fires that happened a year ago, but they're still going off. Okay? But one of those is a real fire alarm.
Right.
How do you find it? So the most important work, and this can be the toughest one, without significant training like NLP or something like that, it's cleaning up this area here, this past. So when he sits down to the homework, he's not carrying the baggage from last year or last 2 years ago, last semester. He's got the skills to complete the homework. Now we ask 3 magic questions. 3 magic questions. And the 3 magic questions, if we have a fire alarm going off, ding, 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 ding. Here's the 3 magic questions. 1, do I have the resources to successfully complete this task? The resources to successfully complete this task or assignment. Because contrary to a lot of popular BS out there, these kids do want to be successful. Okay? Unless they've been beat so much and they're such mismatchers that they can't trust the world around them, they can't trust the adults to take care of them, that they have to reject everything, every suggestion. They want to be successful. They want to be right. They want to get to that next step of their development, whatever it is. So this is a very, very important question. If the answer is no, we need to break that task down. We need to take it, break it down like we would an essay, break it down into pieces, and find out what it is they can't do. Is he getting anxious over doing his whole homework? No way. No way. Is he getting anxious because he's got an essay that's going to take an hour and a half and he doesn't know where to begin? But see, that's very different than getting anxious over homework. It's very, very different. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, although I've tried to have that conversation with them and break it down and say, okay, let's just do this, but by then we're just so beyond, we're beyond reasoning with at that point, And so
yeah. So let's not go there anymore. Let's not go there. When he's beyond reason, don't try to reason with him.
Yeah.
Let's not go there. Been there, done that. I think I said the same thing about me, right?
Right.
Right? When I'm upset, don't tell me I just screwed up. Don't tell me anything.
Right.
Just let me go. you know, throw a tire down some, you know, or beat my chest and leave me alone, and in 5 minutes I'll be fine. Does that make sense? So leave him alone, let him beat his chest. Take a break. Leave him alone. Okay. Do I have the resources to successfully complete the task? Do I have the time to successfully complete the task? So if I've been at school all day for 6 or 8 hours and I'm getting home at 3 or 4 o'clock, and I know that I've got math and science and English, and I also have this essay that's gonna, I know, come on, I've been there, done that. I know this thing's gonna take me an hour and a half from start to finish. Research and rough drafts and this dreadful, you know, where they come back and they red pen it and tell me I have to change everything. I have to do the whole thing again, which is like going backwards, you know, in time. It's bad enough I had to do it once. Now you're going to make me relive this agony by doing a finished draft. Okay? So do I have the time to successfully complete all that without going crazy? No. No. But is it about the homework or is it about one piece of the homework? It's almost 99% about one piece of the homework. So we got to find that. If we don't find it, there's nothing we can do about it. Because it's like this big generalization. Homework. There is no such thing as homework. There's a math assignment. There's an English assignment. There's a science assignment. Does that make sense? There are these 5 questions to answer. There are these words to memorize. So when you get down to what it is, then there's a good chance you're going to find the answer. That the answer to one of these two is no. The last one, 3, is really simple. Is this task important to my goals and values, my needs? And if they don't believe that, they're not going to want to do it. You don't need to do this homework assignment to graduate? Really? You don't need that point. You don't need those points? Okay. Some of the guys I have this conversation with is, if you get 1 0, 1 goose egg, it takes 3 B's just to get back to a C.
Right.
That is ugly math right there. And you can very, very quickly put yourself in a hole. I mean, even if you do something like totally horrible, so you get a 50%, you get an F on it. It's still
At least a couple points.
It still erases 2 of those B's that you have to get a C again. But those zeros, those goose eggs, they're brutal. They are brutal on your GPA.
Well, the problem is that some of these guys are bright enough that they actually play that game.
Yes.
I mean, they have figured out how many they can not turn in or how many X
How
they
many
can
points
get.
is this assignment worth?
Right,
And,
to
yeah.
put in how much time so that it doesn't get into the
Yeah, and they're almost
social-
always wrong on the math. Because I deal with those guys all the time.
For
They're
their
almost
social-
always wrong on the, and they dig themselves into a hole with these optimistic assumptions, and then they can't get out of it. And my son, he himself played the game with English, so he had to take BYU English. He had to take a whole English class in order to stay in the advanced, whatever placement, whatever track he's on. I don't know. So you know, he got a little fast and loose with his homework and what he was going to do, and you know,
Playing the point game.
playing the point game.
But it helps to know that that's the game they're playing and that's where it's coming from.
Yes, yes. I had one girl, she had an IEP, and they literally had this whole structure around her because supposedly she couldn't remember to do her homework. She couldn't remember to get the assignments. And she was like a junior, I think, at the time. Okay? Well, it turned out her idea of doing homework fell into 3 categories. Okay? Category 1 was the assignments that she really, really wanted to do. She would do a great job, and she would hand them in literally 100% of the time. There was category 2, where she had to do it for the grade and would do kind of a half-ass job, and she would hand it in about 80% of the time. And then there was category 3. Category 3 was a homework assignment that she had no intention whatsoever of doing, but her mom caught her. So what she did was she filled in a piece of paper with enough information to convince her mom that she had done the work. But it was so embarrassing, so pathetic, that she handed it in never. So she created this whole impression that she was forgetting to do her homework, she couldn't remember to do her homework, and they had this whole structure built around it, when the problem was that she just decided that she wasn't interested in the assignment, she didn't want to do the assignment, and she didn't need to do the assignment.
I think majority of any regular kid, they follow that formula most of the time.
Yeah.
That's all kids do.
She had her books divided up into two things. She had the authors that were, you know, socially aware. I can't remember the specific ones, but you know, there was like, I don't know, Kurt Vonnegut and I don't know, this was like 5 years ago, so I don't even remember. But a lot of these socially aware, social commentary, you know, commentaries, and she would read those books 100% of the time, and she loved them.
That's why she read them.
And the character, she could identify with the protagonist or the author. And then there was this other category, like, you know, Bonfire, the Vanities, and, you know, like stuff about these self-indulgent, you know, like billionaire type, you know, whatevers, or the Victorian era stuff. All these self-serving, petty. She hated it. She hated the people, she hated the characters, and she would never read those books. But nobody, unless you like charted it out,
Right.
and saw the pattern,
Right.
you would never see that. You would never put it together. It just looked like, oh, she can't remember to do her assignments. Pretty funny. Okay, so these are the 3 questions. If we can answer these 3 questions authentically, yes, the resistance to that assignment should disappear pretty much, assuming there's nothing back here from the past. But if one of these is yes, there's going to be resistance. Now, the younger the child, the less they're going to be to articulate this. I had a little guy, Tristan, and it was the week before Halloween, and what he was articulating to his dad was, I don't want to do the homework. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. That was all he could say. So his dad said, do it or you're not going trick-or-treating. Well, the universe that is homework and the universe that is trick-or-treating they're not connected in any fashion. There's no reality in his world that connects those two worlds. So he said, fine, I don't care. It didn't mean anything to him. Until Saturday came, when guess where he's supposed to be? Here. He wakes up Saturday morning now, and he's figured out that he's not going trick-or-treating. So where's their first stop? Their first stop is here. Right? He gets to drive for 2.5 hours, because they're coming from like the Bay Area. So he gets to drive 2.5 hours to walk in and see me. And he sat in that chair, in that corner,
Yeah.
like this. So it took a good 20 minutes to get his side. What do you want? What do you see? So I honored him and his perspective, not his behavior. Put the behavior aside. What is it you're seeing? How are you perceiving this? What do you see? Oh, well, as it turned out, with a little finagling, he knew that there was a part of his homework that required research that he couldn't do. So what he was not able to articulate as a 7 or 8 or 8 or 9-year-old, I guess he was that while I have good intentions and I really would like to successfully complete my assignments so that I can move on with the grades and with my other classmates, there is a part of this assignment that is beyond my capability, and I really don't understand how I'm going to have the resources to do this research, which is to complete the essay and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, maybe if he had a BA in psychology, he might have been able to figure that out. But as an 8-year-old, he couldn't. All that came out was, I don't want to.
Right.